back for our first episode of Season 6. We've got an all-World Juniors episode. We talked to Uffe Bodin about the Twins Raymond and Holtz. For Team Sweden, we have Sami Hoffren joining us to talk about Team Finland, Anton Lundell, and the Leaf prospects. We've also got Dylan Galloway to tell you all about Byfield and who he thinks could get drafted high on Team USA. As well, we have some trade talk for the Senators with Colin Cudmore. Hit the music. Welcome to Jablam Sports Hockey, folks. I'm your host, Peter Bonjaranov, and the mic is always on. You can find me on Twitter at Russia98. You can find the full show at Jablam Sports. If you have any questions or comments, please tweet us. Use the hashtag Jablam Sports. That's JABLAM Sports. Please subscribe to us if you haven't done so yet, and click on the three dots in your podcasting app. Share our show with 3 hockey fans you know. Thank you, everyone. Remember, check out our website. Go to jablamsports.com. See all our podcasts and even game notes for each episode. You'll get links to all the things we mentioned on this show, including guests. For our podcasts, click on podcasts and then hockey on this show specifically right on our website. Time for some trending now for episode 1, season 6. We have my boy back, Colin Cudmore. Yes, he's the writer and editor at Silver 7 Cents and the co-host of the CPP Pointcast. You can reach him on Twitter at Cudmore Colin. Colin, welcome back to the show.
Jason, thanks for having me on again, Peter. Always glad to be here.
So we're going to get into some Sens talk. It is the first episode of this season, as I'm talking about. So we got 2 weeks of World Juniors, or a week and a half, you could say, and then we get right into the NHL action quickly. I'm going to try to have 4 big preview episodes for each division with people covering every single team. Does that sound interesting?
Oh, yeah. Damn. It's quite the undertaking, but Godspeed on your quest. My gosh.
So I kind of did it fairly well, I might add, for the beginning of the round robin playoffs and everything. I had 2 big episodes. We had 8 reporters and bloggers for the entry level teams, and then the follow-up one with the teams that were already in, obviously. So this one's going to be even harder with 31 teams, and I'm going to try to do it divisional based. So it's,
wow.
Yeah, so the North Division, Eastern, Central, West. There is no Metropolitan Division, right? I guess.
Yeah, what a strange year it's going to be. Yeah,
it's going to be weird. So we're going to, of course, talk about Sens talk with Colin. We're going to get into the new contracts, and we're going to get into Stutzel. Before that, I'm going to have Colin on the show for sure for the preview stuff if he's available. But a little inkling into, what do you think? Like, we're going to talk about these new signings. It's a short season. It's only 56 games.
Mm-hmm.
Where do the Ottawa Senators actually think they are? Do they think it's such a short season we can get these veterans and maybe push for one of those 4 spots?
Well, I think there's a bit of a fractured fan base right now in terms of the viewpoint for the upcoming season. I think a lot of that ties into how the front office was perceiving things too. Because personally, I'm probably a bit more on the pessimistic side. I think the Sens are pretty comfortably the worst team in the Canadian division right now, at least on paper. Maybe a 56-game season or shortened season will make things a bit more disparate. It gives a bit more randomness, a bit more chance for them to maybe squeak in if they get some good goalie luck or something. Their percentages work in their favor. But on paper, I think the Sens are pretty clearly the bottom end of the Canadian division at this point. Of course, NHL hockey, inherent randomness is all over the place, and maybe they can sneak in, but as of right now, I feel like it's probably going to be another bottom of the barrel season, another high draft pick in the works.
Yeah, it's such a peculiar thing to make those moves. Do you think it's kind of like they're trying to hit the bottom of the cap?
No, they're well past the cap for at this point.
Yeah.
It's a matter of cost savings And that's why I also mentioned is how there's a bit of a disparate viewpoints right now between how management kind of sees things as well, in the sense that they're kind of looking for a bit of a step forward from the last 3 seasons where they finished bottom 2 in every single season. And I think that some improvement from the young talent can help with that. But I also feel like they're starting to make moves now where it feels like they're trying to accelerate this rebuild. And we see how poorly that's worked out for so many teams who've done that. Like you look at just at the front office as well. Pierre Dorian, general manager, it's his last season under contract right now. He's in a contract year. He needs to show that the team can actually improve things. Mm-hmm. Eugene Melnyk infamously went up to all the team sponsors at an event and called for this to be the first year of unparalleled success. So there's pressure around the organization right now, both internally, especially internally, and now on from the fan base too. Even though personally, as a fan standpoint, I don't really expect to see much improvement, and I actually think it would be better to see another high draft pick. But yeah, it's I do not have high hopes. I feel like if management thinks they're going to take a step forward, that they're kind of setting themselves up for disappointment right now.
Yeah, for sure. So when we get into that first trade for Stepan from the Coyotes in exchange for a second-round pick, which would be vital to a rebuild. And the good thing is, I guess, for them against salary, they paid $2 million off that bonus.
Yeah, that's the theme with every single Sens trade for the last few years at least now. I think the first one, it's been a theme where you have to look at the money first. Mm-hmm. Before the players, you look at the contracts, what's happening, what's going on here. I think it was the Mika Zibanejad trade was the very first one where it kind of really hit the lightning rod of taking Derek's who the heck was it? Derek Brassard taking his bonus had to be paid, and they essentially paid a second round pick for New York to pay their bonus. And this is a bit of an odd move in the sense that they're not that they're kind of paying for that bonus to be paid again. And it's kind of weird that Derek Stepan, even as this kind of cap casualty right now for Arizona, they're trying to get him off the cap. And yet they're somehow able to recoup a second round pick for that. That just didn't really seem to make sense in my mind and seemed like a mistake on Pierre Dorian's part. In terms of actual player analysis, Stepan is nowhere near where he used to be as a player. He's 30 years old now, which is like when you look at the prime of a player right now, especially for forwards, it's typically around 23 to 25, although some even more recent research shows it's more in the 21 to 23 range, then slightly curtails after that, and after like 28 really starts to drop off. Stepan is on the wrong side of that for sure. He's been that way for a couple years now. Hasn't worked out for him in Arizona, and why the Sens thought that he'd be worth spending a second round pick on is kind of beyond me at this point. That's I would have expected them to be gaining a pick from this instead, yet here we are.
Yeah, for sure. And as a Leaf fan, and I think Leaf Nations feel the same boat, it's like when the Leafs were slowly getting the rebuild going, and then they weren't too sure what to do, and then they traded 2 second-round picks for Boland, who was also on the downturn of his career. And I thought it was weird. I'm like, you're getting him for one season or the remainder of a season. You're trading picks, which would be vital in a rebuild. I don't understand it. And like you mentioned, Stepan, just I think the 28 points and 10 goals last season for the Coyotes.
Yeah, you could look at this in the sense that when the Sens traded for Vladislav Nemestikov at the beginning of last season, they traded a pick for him. They flipped him for basically the same pick at the end of the year. Maybe they're hoping that they can flip Stepan for something better, but that maybe they're buying low on him. But given everything that we've seen how Stepan has done in the last couple of seasons now, I feel hesitant to believe that at this point.
And then the next thing, pretty much almost the same day, next day, Braden Coburn, Cedric Paquette, they're going to Ottawa, and a second-round pick from the Lightning for Gaborik and Nilsson. So they're getting guys that can play, I guess you could say, instead of guys that can't play. And they're going to go, for Tampa at least, they got guys that go on the IR, and Ottawa gets at least a second-round pick for it. For these veteran-type players, I guess Paquette's pretty good.
No, I disagree.
No? All right.
I think like all Sens trades, like we have to follow the money first. That's the entire reason why this trade was made. Anders Nielsen, unfortunately, is still dealing with concussions issues. It seems if he's not going to be playing at all next year, which is really terrible. Like what an awesome person to be part of the organization first, and also as a goalie, he's been solid the last couple of years too, which I guess explains why they were so confident in trading for Matt Murray as well. But Anders Nielsen's gone. He won't be playing. Marian Gaborik also won't be playing. Obviously, he's pretty much out of the league at this point after his storied career. And this is kind of makes up for the Stepan trade in that they're getting their second round pick back. But in terms of finances, it's kind of weird because they're going on LTIR, those two players.
Yeah.
So they aren't going to be counting against the cap once they're past that beginning of the season. So the Sens gained some cap space by adding these couple players, but they're also like losing salary because they're the two players they acquired have a lower salary than the two players heading out. So this is like the ultimate Pierre Dorian / Gene Melnyk move. It's utilizing cap space to actually get a pick back, which is what we've been clamoring for the Sens to do all off season. Yet they can only do it when they somehow decline their salary expenditure as well. So keeping Eugene Melnyk's pocketbook a bit happier. In terms of the actual players that they acquired, Cedric Paquette has been an absolute black hole offensively, has not made up for it defensively. He's probably he's just above replacement level player. Like you can maybe put him on the fourth line if you're desperate. And then Braden Coburn as well has been not the best as well. I mean, they both have their Stanley Cup with Tampa Bay, and some people point to that. But I also look at every win comes in support of some players and in spite of some players. And if you're looking at the Tampa Bay roster, Paquette and Coburn are not two guys I would have pointed to as people who actually contributed to that overall team success. They kind of were some of the holes in the roster that they succeeded despite.
Yeah. So for myself, I would say I barely noticed Coburn, and of course it was because he only played the 3-4 games. Paquette played every single game of the playoffs, but I remember even staying tuned and watching almost every single Tampa game in the playoffs, and that line with Paquette was just not scoring at all, and I wasn't sure why. And I guess you could say Paquette was hurting that line.
I can't remember exactly which one he was playing on, but looking at his isolated impacts from Ineffective Math, Michael McCurdy on Twitter, and a few other various models as well have all painted him as quite the black hole offensively. And in terms of defense as well, he just hasn't really shown much there either. And he just keeps getting chances for some reason. And you mentioned earlier the kind of upside of the trade is that the Sens got two guys who can play for two guys who can't play. Mm-hmm. And they got the second round pick back, which actually in my mind is probably the most valuable asset to Ottawa in terms of their utility. Because obviously these guys are going to be free agents at the end of the year anyways. And that's probably not going to matter, as I outlined earlier. But in terms of getting two guys who can play, the Sens just didn't need that either. There's absolutely no utility to them in the sense that not only are they going to be mediocre at best players this year, they just already have a whole roster filled of these at replacement level, below replacement level guys who are going to be at best like fourth liners. And they have like 6 or 7 of them now in their forward core and like 4 or 5 of them in their defense. And if they're looking to actually improve the roster, this was not the way to do it. If they're looking to block young players and make some tougher decisions in that sense, which is what like they really need to be playing the young players this year. It's kind of a way to give DJ Smith some flexibility of keeping some young guys out of the roster. So I think it's a better move for sure in the sense that the finances work out and they get that pick back, giving up essentially nothing. Really, it's 2 players who aren't going to be playing for them this year. So in my mind, I like that. But in terms of what this means for the overall roster impact, I'm kind of more on the pessimistic side here, I'd say.
All right, let's bring in some optimistic views and everything. Yeah. With the Ottawa Senators signing the entry-level contract for Stützle. How good has he looked on a rough Germany team so far in these junior games?
Oh, he's been their heart and soul for sure. Him and John Jason Peterka have been absolutely fun to watch. And that's kind of the brand of Stützle's game, is that he's just really a tornado on the ice. He just does everything almost to a fault. Actually, I would say it's sometimes to a fault, and it gives me a bit of pause on how he might fare next year in the NHL. He just loves to do so much by himself and utilize the space in those very unique ways that can often get him on a highlight reel, but can also be a detriment when playing against stronger competition. But at least on this World Junior stage especially, that's like prime territory to utilize his amazing hands, which I still think were the best in the draft class. And just so dazzling with the puck on his stick. Like he can do so much magic with that even on a Germany roster, he just stands out even more with how he's able to just dominate the competition that way.
I've been talking to all our guests about comparables and potentials, if you're going to compare him, if it's possible, I know it's hard sometimes, compare Tim to anybody in the NHL or NHL past, who would it be?
Oh, I'm personally not too big on comparables, but I think the name that gets floated around a lot is Patrick Kane, just because of the dazzling hands that he has and the way that he maneuvers around the ice in that way and gets into, he's kind of a two-way threat in that sense, just the way he utilizes himself in tight spaces. Whether he can actually reach that level and succeed against NHL competition, I think there's going to be a bit of a road bump when he gets into NHL ice. I wouldn't expect him to be a superstar right away, like some team to be expecting. But yeah, that's kind of the comparable at this point. Just someone with amazing, flashy hands who just uses space, like every little inch of space, extremely well.
Perfect. Thank you, Colin. You can reach him on Twitter at Cudmore Colin. Colin, thank you for joining the show.
Awesome. Thanks for having me on, Peter.
And of course, just like all our guests today and all our guests in all our episodes, we're going to have everything on our game notes, including Colin's contact and previous articles they've written, all on our website. Check it out, jablamsports.com. Let's talk some Team Sweden and their prospects. Of course, now on the show is Uffe Bodin. He's the director-in-chief at, how would you say that?
Hockey Sverige. That's the one people in North America usually have a hard time dealing with, but it basically means Hockey Sweden in English. So,
exactly.
Swedish, so yeah.
Hockey Sweden, of course, and I wasn't gonna attempt it. I'm usually pretty good with my pronunciation of things, and maybe it's a bit of my Eastern European background, but with Swedish or maybe even Finnish names, I might struggle, and that's why I won't step on that. You also
okay.
That's good, and you also have your own podcast.
Yeah, so me and two buddies, we've been doing a podcast called Noel Timmen, which means the NHL Hour, for about 6 years now, I think, or 7, I guess. Yeah. So yeah, we've been doing it for a long time. So it's just dealing with the everyday things that happen in the NHL and recording once a week. So that's something fun that I take great pride in.
You can find him on Twitter at Uffe Bodin. Uffe, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks, Peter.
So before we get into some of the prospects and great kids playing on Team Sweden, how's the temperature with everything going on in the world right now in Sweden?
Yeah, it's been a crazy year. In Sweden we took a bit of a different approach. So, we haven't had the kind of lockdown that you've been dealing with in Canada or the US. We've been, having sort of our freedom. It's probably going to take 5 or 10 years before we know, like, if that was the right way to go. Right now, it seems like we made a mistake because there's obviously been a lot of cases of COVID over here and a lot of fatalities too. So, it's can't wait for the vaccine to come. It's 2021 is hopefully going to be a better year.
Yeah, sure is. And hopefully the cases even look better in the bubble in Edmonton for all the World Juniors. We know especially Germany's been struggling with it a bit.
Yeah, we had a few cases in Sweden. We lost some real key players due to some positive tests. So yeah, it feels kind of weird this year, like what comes out of this, and just the implication it gets on the whole tournament. Yeah,
it's changed a lot of how it's going on. Even we've been seeing some family members. I've seen they've been showing them on video during the games, and that's pretty neat to see. But of course, a lot of family members would probably be at the tournament if it wasn't for COVID.
Yeah, as would we, I guess.
Getting to the team, of course, they're up 2-0. Team Sweden defeating Austria on Monday night 4-0 in Edmonton. The Twins look great again out there in that game. First off, why do people call them the Twins?
I guess they've been playing together for such a long time. I mean, basically since they came up in the under 16 team, Team Sweden's youngest youth team. They've been playing together on the top line basically. So I think that's why. And I know someone at the Hockey News, I can't remember if it was Ryan Kennedy or someone, actually dubbed them the Terror Twins, just due to what they've been able to accomplish together at the international stage. They play for separate teams back home here in Sweden, but obviously on the international stage they seem to thrive playing together.
Yeah, and of course we're talking about Raymond and Holtz at the top of the entry draft, both of them 2020. The third overall selected by Detroit Red Wings, Lucas Raymond. Early in the last game, he took a rough tumble in the boards, but I guess he looked good. Later on, of course, scoring that big goal.
Yeah, he came back. So he said afterwards that it probably looked worse than it was. But I still think everyone was kind of anxious for a while there because he left the ice. And obviously he's going to be the key player going forward now that they have the big games against Russia and the US. I mean, if they lose him, it's like it's going to be tough for them to stay alive in this tournament. That's for sure.
What is Raymond's comparable in terms of a previous NHL player out there?
Oh, I'm not good at the comparable game, but I mean, if you look at some of the players that Sweden has produced for the last 10 years or so, I mean, it's tough to compare him to Elias Pettersson, just because Elias Pettersson is probably the best player that we'll have in the next decade coming out of Sweden.
Yeah.
But in the sense that he's both a playmaker and a shooter, that's where I see the comparable, because Elias Pettersson, as you know, he's got a lethal shot, but he is also like a really good setup man. And I kind of see the same thing in Lucas Raymond, in that he can score on his own, but he's also a great playmaker. So he's pretty complete player in that way, offensively.
And of course, 7th overall selected by the New Jersey Devils is Holtz, who assisted on that final goal in a play that looked terrific. What are some of those top skills that Holtz has?
Yeah, he has a great shot. I mean, if you look at pure goal scoring, I mean, he hasn't scored in this tournament yet, but I think it's just a matter of time based on the volume of shots that he puts at the net right now. But I mean, in terms of goal scoring, he's probably the best prospect that Sweden has, basically ever produced. I mean, we were not famous for producing great goal scorers. We only had 150 goal scorer in the NHL, and that was Håkan Loob for the Calgary Flames back in the 80s. So he could be like the big goal scorer for that, maybe the biggest goal scorer we've seen in Swedish hockey if everything clicks for him in the NHL. That of course remains to be seen. I mean, but it looks like he's going to be coming to a pretty great situation with the New Jersey Devils. You know, they have both Jack Hughes and Nico Hischier, who are two excellent young centermen. So I'm guessing he's going to play with one of them, and that's probably going to do wonders for his career.
What type of goal scorer would he be? More right in front of the net, or like an Alexander Ovechkin, or a setup guy on the power play? What kind of scorer is he?
I mean, from what he's shown this for, it's just like the shot that he has, that he is capable of scoring from, distance, which is not, something you see very often these days, because the goalies are so good, and obviously the defensemen are so good at stepping up in the lanes and blocking shots. But I still think he needs to do a ton of work on his one-timers, so I can't really say Alex Ovechkin, because Alex Ovechkin's one-timer is one of the most frightening things in hockey, even to this dated, age 35. He can really, muster a great shot. But I mean, from what I've seen from Alexander Holtz in the SHL back home, he's a shooter that can score from distance. But I still think he needs to do some work on that one-timer.
All right, another person who's been scoring some beautiful goals is Noel Gunler. He had a great snipe in that first game, drafted 41st overall by the Hurricanes. Is he a almost a pure goal scorer, or what kind of player is he?
Yeah, I mean, his shot is obviously his biggest asset. That I would say so. Yeah, but he's been struggling a bit back home. The team he started the season with in the SHL Luleå, he didn't get a lot of ice time, and eventually soured and demanded a move, and was granted that wish and left for a new team in the SHL in Beniers, and he's been getting some more looks there with the new team, but it's still, I mean, the jury is still out on him because we haven't really seen what he's capable. He was cut from the under 18 team before they won the World Championships back in 2019, so we haven't seen him too much at the international stage, but just from these two first games, obviously he has 3 goals, so it's been a great start for him. So he's coming along nicely. It's just people don't really know what to expect from him, but it's a great start of this tournament, that's for sure.
Is that something we can see to expect out of him? Maybe not being, team friendly and maybe wanting to be moved or asking different questions with organizations?
I don't know, but this was the first time he changed team. He's been with the same organization basically his whole life, so I that's probably a stretch to accuse him of that. But I mean, just seeing the national team cutting him from time to time, which has been kind of a head scratcher, that makes you wonder, like, is there something beyond just hockey? Because obviously on the ice he's one of his top players in his age category. So that's been kind of a head scratcher. So, but I don't know, like the kid looks terrific in this tournament. So we'll just hope that he can turn things around and be a more complete player at the senior level as well.
The captain, Philip Broberg, he had the game versus Austria off, but looked great versus the Czechs. 3 assists, and he looks really steady on the back end.
Yeah, I mean, he's a wonderful skater. Just watching him transport the puck from his own zone up to the offensive zone that's kind of an art in itself. I mean, it's almost like Scott Niedermayer-esque if you want to go that far. But he's got some other things to work on. His season back home has been kind of up and down, and I think it's in his best interest, that he stays and completes the season in Sweden just to get that extra seasoning. I know he turned a lot of heads when the Oilers had their camp before the playoffs started this summer, but I wouldn't call him, ready to play in the NHL at this point. I think he needs some more time in Sweden. So it's probably going to be good for him to, first and foremost get this tournament, be a captain and take all the responsibility, and then go back home, finish the season with Skellefteå and aim for the NHL the next season. Is that?
You really stole my second question there.
That happens.
Yeah, it's all good. And so, yeah, he was drafted in 2019, 8th overall by the Oilers. So it is kind of interesting that he did get to go to the bubble last year, and then he's entering basically the exact same bubble with this tournament. So who is possible to be taking the jump to the NHL from Team Sweden maybe this year?
Yeah, that would be bubble boy number 2, another Swedish defenseman who actually was in the bubble this summer. That's Victor Soderstrom, selected 11th overall by the Arizona Coyotes back in 2019. He was with the Coyotes during their camp, and he's expected to go to Arizona once the World Juniors are over. And he's also looked terrific at the start of this tournament. Had some really flashy plays, set up his teammates for goals. I think he has 4 assists in these 2 first games. So the Coyotes, they're kind of a sad team right now with the way things have been going for them. Yeah. So they could use some youth on that blue line. So I wouldn't be surprised if he gets an honest shot at playing in the NHL this upcoming season.
If he does take that jump to go for the Coyotes over there, where do you see he fits in? Is it just the bottom third pairing for now? And what else is it to his game that makes him ready?
Yeah, I mean, obviously he's gonna play limited minutes to begin with. I mean, he's still only 19, so that's probably the best for him. But I mean, he's a really gifted passer. He's a great skater. So I mean, he's got some things to work on defensively, but the most important thing I think for him is that he's become a lot stronger. You can see that he's much more physically mature. I don't know if he's at the level yet that he's going to be able to, play the whole season in the NHL. That might be a stretch, but I see him at least getting a shot and then maybe playing some games with Tucson once the AHL gets going again. So, yeah, I think he's, just based on where the Coyotes are and, what their defense looks like, I think it's going to be good for him and to come in and maybe have, Oliver Ekman-Larsson or Niklas Hjalmarsson as a mentor for him. Just taking him through the hoops of the NHL, I think that's going to be beneficial to him.
That would be great to have Oliver as a mentor there. I know I fell in love with Ekman-Larsson when he was in the World Junior Tournament many moons ago. All right, Uffe, thank you for joining me. You can follow him on Twitter at Uffe Bodin. Uffe, thank you.
Hey, thank you, Peter. My pleasure.
Let's talk some Team Finland. With us now is Sami Hoffren. He's the hockey writer for...
The paper is called Ilta-Sanomat, obviously.
Okay, yes, obviously. Obviously. And how would you pronounce that or say that in English?
Like I said it, Iltasanomat. He's one of the biggest ones in Finland.
And you can also find him on Twitter at @Hoffren. Sami, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Good to be here.
So we're going to talk about Team Finland, and they've started off pretty well against maybe some of the easier teams in Germany and Switzerland. We will get to some Toronto Maple Leafs prospects, and I don't know if it's maybe Toronto Maple Leaf Finland, Team Finland. But before we get to them, I do want to talk about the captain, Anton Lundell. He looks like a formidable player. In the game versus Germany, he got pissed off. He got a penalty. He came right back and scored a great goal. Fantastic.
I mean, Anton Lundell, he's one of those guys before the tournament. He was the captain and he's the best player on this team by far. Mm-hmm. And the season that he played before he came here to Edmonton, he was one of the top players in Finnish league already. And he's been dominant throughout every game he plays. He's very mature. He's a two-way guy, and that was one of the reasons why before the draft some scouts were in doubt, like is he dynamic enough on offensive side, and does he have the tools to become actually a number one center or number two center? But I can see Lundell, one of those guys that can have a pretty fast impact in Florida when he makes his way there. And so far he's been very good in Edmonton. And I don't know, it's just that kid doesn't have any real flaws in his game. Obviously skating is one of those, when every time we talk about Lundell, that's one of the issues that rises up. And if you compare him to like the fastest players on that draft that went in top 10, sure, you can make an argument that that's one of his flaws, but overall, I don't think there's not more mature two-way player in this tournament than Anton Lundell.
When you talk about his skating speed, and that's one thing I look at when I see a duration of a longer career. So is that something that you can see that he might make a good impact within 2 to 3 years, but maybe might not be able to stretch his career for a very long time?
It's hard to tell. I mean, I think Lundell is one of those guys that when he makes to the NHL, you can put him on the third line easily, and he can lead that line already. But is he dynamic enough to be that offensive horse who can actually be the first guy on the defensive zone and then be one of the first guys on the offensive zone? Because it's all about skating. But the hockey IQ with Lundell is off the charts. So he can read plays, and you don't have to be the fastest guy on the ice. If you can make the right routes and see the plays developing and be on the right spot. And that's where he's very good, and he's very mature on that part of his game already.
Yeah, the 12th overall pick by the Panthers in 2020. Is it my idea, or is it a bit of a stretch in terms of maybe, I don't know, maybe kind of like a Rupe Hintz?
You can make that argument. Actually, I was thinking about all the Finnish players that he reminds. Hintz might be one of those guys. Mm-hmm. Hintz used to play in IFK, where Lundell plays right now.
Yeah.
So, there's a connection. But I remember when I talked to him before the season, he wants to be a reliable guy, and he used to watch a lot of how Barkov plays, and obviously now he's going to be his teammate in Florida, but also Datsuk. So that kind of tells how he sees the game. He's not one of those guys who just wants to put up points. He wants to be the guy who the coach really, really depends on, and one of those guys who can play if you're leading or trailing. It doesn't matter. He's one of those guys who can make an impact on the ice. And I would say, if I need to pick some NHL player right now that he reminds of, I think maybe Brayden Schenn right now. Mm-hmm. I know Schenn was very dynamic when he was a junior, and he was obviously one of the top prospects in his age group. But now if you look Brayden Schenn, you can see a lot of same things on Lundell's game. He's not that maybe explosive than Brayden Schenn, but how they're skating, how they're passing the puck and reading the plays. I can see a lot of Brayden Schenn on Anton Lundell already.
All right, let's switch it up and go to some of those Maple Leaf prospects, and of course a little bit later in the draft, who I know Dauber Prospects ranked him, I think, 28th. And then he somehow dropped to the Maple Leafs at 64th overall, and that's Topi. Why do you think some people had him ranked pretty high, and then he fell a little bit lower to the Leafs?
Man, I don't know. I like his playing style, but I guess because Topi Niemela plays in Kärpät, which is the top club in Finland. Mm-hmm. That's the team where Sebastian Aho, Puljujärvi, a lot of players have come up, and it's a really, really tough lineup to get in. Mm-hmm. And Niemela hasn't played that many games this season. And last year he was playing a lot of games, but the role was pretty minimal. He played with Lasse Kukkonen, who was the captain and who was the leader on the team. So they wanted him to play with an older guy and kind of like learn the curves and how to actually play against men. And Niemela he's not a small player, but obviously he needs more strength to his body. He's very thin, and you can see that in different one-on-ones and along the boards and in front of the net. But he hasn't put up a lot of points in juniors, even mm-hmm. though he's a skilled player. But he's one of those players that you can. It's almost like the modern NHL is made for him, because mm-hmm. you need mobile Ds who can move the puck without being too aggressive in a way that making plays without being risky. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's why I think Niemela is one of those guys that the Leafs really liked him, because he kind of suits how the Leafs want to play, and he's a smart two-way player without being overly physical or anything like that. So I think it was a good pick by the Leafs for sure.
Yeah, Niemela has really good smooth skating out there. And in my opinion, I think he's doing fairly well so far with a goal and 3 assists at the juniors so far. I think he's in the top 10 in points. What part of his game does he need to work on a little bit more on the smaller NHL ice surface then because of his skating ability?
I would say the one-on-one battles, and obviously, in different rink, because on the European ice surface, you have more room, so you don't have to be along the boards that often, and you can kind of get away with that. You're not that physical and maybe not that strong. So in Edmonton, you can see different situations where he kind of, he's not sure when to close the gap or be more passive. So I think that's one of the reasons. But once he has the puck, oh man, things are happening, and he's been one of the top players so far in the Finnish team, and he leads the Finnish team right now in points. So and they need Niemela big time because they have a couple of guys on the back end, which you can almost bet on that they're going to have a strong tournament. But Niemela was one of those guys that, because he hasn't played that much, you weren't sure if he's going to be how effective in this tournament. But so far, so good.
Another Maple Leaf prospect taken 58th overall in the same draft is Roni Hirvonen. 2 assists plus 3. He looks like a really good two-way forward type player.
Yeah, very smart. Talk about hockey IQ with Lundell. Same thing with Roni Hirvonen. His dad used to play in Finnish league, and his dad was kind of this grinder and tough guy. But Hirvonen is, totally different player. He can make decisions in tight space and holds on the puck and kind of like be one of those guys who can sense what's happening next. And he's keeping the puck just the right amount and then making the play, and then his line gets on the same level and makes, in a game against Switzerland, I think he was very good, one of the top players in the Finnish team, and he can play on the wing, on center, and in this tournament obviously he plays on the wing, but it's almost like they have 2 centers in first line because Hirvonen and Lundell are playing on the same line, so they can switch places, and Hirvonen is very good playmaking forward, and I can see him. He's a smaller guy, so I think takes more time for him to actually go to the Leafs camp, but he's been pretty solid in Finnish league so far and getting a lot of minutes in Porinassa.
Nice. And as well, the Leafs drafted Kokkonen, right?
Yep, he's one of those guys. It seems that he's been playing forever because he played his first game in Finnish league when he was 15.
Wow.
So he was the youngest guy in the history of the league to play a game in the Finnish Pro League. But Kokkonen is one of those guys that you don't see him that often. You need to pay attention because he's more of a defensive D who just plays his own game, not very flashy. First pass is always hard and simple, and that's it. He's one of the backbones of this team because he was last year also in the tournament, and he's been solid. He's one of those guys that the Leafs are probably pretty happy how's he's been playing and how's the development in his game in the last 2-3 years.
Right, let's switch it up and go. Ottawa drafted 33rd overall, Robbie Järventie. I haven't noticed him much in the tourney so far.
Yeah, he hasn't been that good. Finland is very deep in center position, but on the wing, especially on the top line, first line, he's been very good. But Järventie is definitely one of those guys that needs to step up more and produce because he's one of the few guys on that team who's actually a goal scorer by nature. And they don't have that many guys on this team who can say the same. And he's been one of the best rookies in Finnish league this season in Ilves. And he was almost, he was playing the second tier league last year in Finland, which is very uncommon nowadays. Usually those guys are playing in Finnish league, but he put up a lot of points last year, and now he's been just lights out good in Ilves and one of the top goal scorers on that team. So that's why I think people are a little bit disappointed by his performance right now, because Finland hasn't played. They only played Germany and Switzerland, and those are the teams that you need to just put up a lot of points and just make sure that you get going before they face Canada. So obviously there's one game against Slovakia left, but Jaraventia is one of those guys that he needs to get going.
We saw in previous years, before we go, I want to mention Atu Ratti looked phenomenal last year, 2 goals, assist. He didn't join the team this year, but the rumors are that he could go very high in the draft next year.
Man, this is baffling, because before the season, Aatu Räty was one of those guys that even in TSN all over the place, people were, saying that this kid might be the first overall. And he plays in Kärpät, the same team as Topi Niemelä.
Yeah.
And like I said, it's a deep team. It's hard to get in, but still, he only has played 4 games so far in Finnish league, and he's been playing in juniors. But I don't know what happened, because last year's tournament, he was one of the best players in Team Finland, and he was the youngest guy on that team. And now he's not on the team. He's been struggling. I heard his confidence has taken a big hit because he hasn't played that well. The tools are out there. I'm not convinced that he's all of a sudden he's a worse player than he was last year, but mentally he's not in the right place right now. And it just shows that when you're talking about young players, 17, 18-year-old players, their development isn't, going smooth all the time. There's going to be hiccups, and there's going to be seasons where things aren't going as you planned. But obviously, this is the year that you could, you wanted to see his play in World Juniors and competing against the best players of the world. But right now, I was surprised that he's not on the team, and it's been a big issue, and people are talking a lot, especially before the tournament. We're talking about many weeks before the tournament that why he's not on the team, because he's one of the top prospects in his age group, but obviously because he's not on the World Juniors, he's not going to be the first overall. That's for sure. But I can see him still in top 10.
When we talk about confidence and people dealing with ups and downs and being drafted a high pick, maybe we should get a phone call between him and Patrick Laine.
Yeah. I mean, that could make sense. Yeah. Finland is a small country, so I guess you can get the phone number easily and just make a call. But Aatu Räty he's a very mature kid. He's a good kid. I mean, it's not like he got cocky all of a sudden. That's not the case. But it's just he's been struggling, and I'm confident that he finds his own path, and we're gonna hear a lot of good things about Aatu Räty, even though he's not in this tournament. But it's gonna be interesting to see how he responds to all this, because this was a big news in Finland, and he hasn't been in the media since he got snubbed from the team. So and he hasn't played in the Finnish league after that. So it's going to be interesting to see how he responds.
All right. We'll have to talk more about him later on. Again, you can find him on Twitter at S Hoffren. Sami, thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Peter.
Now we chat with Dylan Galloway. He's the head scout of Eastern Canada for FC Hockey, covering, of course, all the prospects, and of course, a lot of them are here in the World Juniors. You can reach him on Twitter at Dylan Galloway _. Dylan, welcome back to the show.
Thanks for having me on again, Peter.
All right, so you messaged me and you're like, yeah, there's a couple of guys that I'm really interested about. So let's get to it. I know first off, from Team USA, draft eligible for 2021, Matthew Beniers. before we go about his gameplay, I know I was looking at rankings and stuff, and I even saw Bob McKenzie had him way up there, I think 4th in terms of going at the draft early so far. Where do you see him? Is it possible you think he can go that high or higher?
Honestly, yeah, I think he probably could go that high. His game just keeps taking his game to another level. We were having an interesting chat in our last call at Future Considerations among the Eastern group because I also run the U.S. scouts for us, and we were kind of talking about the 3 Michigan players in Power, Johnson, and Beniers, and kind of how you think about ranking those 3 players, because the prevailing thought obviously is Owen Power is the top of the group, and then you kind of got Johnson and Beniers there that are kind of battling between each other. But yeah, I absolutely could see Beniers going in that top 5. I said it on Twitter earlier today. Definitely in the top 10. No question in my mind about that. Top 5, you're starting to stretch me a little bit with that. It's a pretty crowded group up at the top, and there's a lot of different movement. So yeah, I definitely think with his elevated level of play, especially at the World Juniors, that's one of the things that sticks in people's mind. But it also gives players like a good boost of confidence through the second half of their seasons when they go home. They learn a lot. It's a different level of play. So you could really see that translate into his game when he heads back to Michigan. And yeah, so I could definitely see him going in the top 5.
What lights up your eyes when you see Bernie playing?
I particularly love how he just never seems to stop moving his feet. He's in great positioning constantly, hardworking, competitive. I just love everything about that, because he does that in all 3 zones, 200 feet. You see him making passes and then moving around the offensive zone, getting lined up. He's stick tapping. He wants that puck back. Then he makes a smart little pass, gets an assist today. And then he's got a great motor, gets all the way back, clogs up the neutral zone, gets back into the defensive zone, is covering zone on guys, getting back deep into his defensive zone. So every single zone that he's in, he does a great job of being a smart positional player and always being in the right spot to be, on the puck quickly.
For potential, I see him as a really, really good second line, maybe center. Where do you see him?
Yeah, he's definitely a middle 6 guy. For me, definitely ceiling could be second line, two-way forward. He's got the smarts and the work ethic to be a centerman, I think. So I definitely could see him as a middle 6 center or 2-3. Definitely top end as a 2. But I think even his floor at this point is a 3. So yeah, I definitely think he falls in that middle area of the lineup.
All right, let's move on to Team Canada. Everybody loves to talk about the 2nd overall pick, Quinton Byfield. I already saw on the internet, I forget who it was, but I've seen a few people, they're picking up the retro reverse LA Kings beautiful gold Byfield jersey. He looks good in gold. And I even coined him as calling him the Rook. Maybe some fans who love nicknames can call him that. I know people that follow Queen's Gambit or chess fans might want to call him a Rook, right? But I would say welcome to Byfield Castle. I even direct messaged him and said you can use that if you wanted to. He's already got an assist and +3 in the tournament so far. So how should Kings fans feel about that, his gameplay so far?
I've seen a lot of chatter online about, some people questioning his overall ability, him being on the 4th line still. Mm-hmm. I think a lot of people need to also realize that he is the youngest player on this team right now. He's born in August. Matthew Beniers, who we just talked about, is born in 2002 and only a few months older than Byfield himself. So when you think about that, when Beniers isn't drafted yet, Byfield just recently drafted. So I don't think the Kings fans should worry at all about his play. I'm seeing a lot of issues actually with the way he's being deployed on that 4th line. I watched all of his shifts from the Slovakia game earlier today, And basically Canada's D seems to be rushing that stretch pass up the left wing to Connor Zary a bunch, which is fine. But the one thing that Byfield does extremely, extremely well is transition that puck. He needs the puck on his stick, entering the zone, making smart plays. He needs to be the guy feeding the puck to players, dishing the puck. He has an incredible mind for playmaking, and the way that he seems to be being played and deployed with Team Canada on that fourth line, they seem to be putting him in a puck retrieval position, dumping the puck upon entry, having Byfield rush down and pick up the puck, which is not really his strong suit. He's better with the puck on his stick, and so it's not putting him in a spot for success. So I think if Kings fans are at all worried about seeing him at the World Juniors not, being the dominant force that maybe they thought that he was going to be, I wouldn't be too worried at all about that. He's super, super young still. And I just see so much potential in him, especially with his size, speed, smarts, and ability to play with skill with the puck.
We're recording this right before the game, happening in mere seconds. Of course, this episode's on Wednesday. What do you feel in terms of the ice time that he's getting and how they're being deployed? Can he step up the rest of the way in this tournament?
Well, I think I saw that he's on the third line. He's running a third line center at the practices now, so he could already be up this game. We'll see. I know I said that the way that he's being deployed is a bit of an issue, especially in my mind, just not using his skills. But at the same time, he does need to step up, and when he's in those zones and playing the puck retriever, he needs to show his coach that he can play that role if he's being asked to play that role. So it might not be his forte, but if you want to move up the line, you have to do the job that you're being tasked to do. So if he can use that speed, use his size to get on the puck, be hard to play against on the puck, and really work the puck from the outside to the inside, retrieve it, hang on to it, keep his feet under him, keep his feet moving, then I think, yes, we could see him maybe not move up any farther up the lineup. I think third spot is where Tournier is gonna, that's his peak for Byfield. But I think we could see a more elevated role if Tournier likes what he sees in the first period.
When he goes to LA, he looks like he'll probably be learning from another big top skilled two-way center in Kopitar. Is his comparable kind of like a Kopitar?
Yeah, maybe. I think that he's not going to be as much of a two-way guy as Kopitar. Yeah. But he's definitely got the skill to be that number one guy, and he's wicked smart, just like Kopitar is. So I think that's honestly a great mentor for him to have, to show him the work ethic that it takes to do that two-way game while mixing in the skill. So I definitely think him being in that lineup with a Turcotte, and I think Velarde is going to be there at some point too. So when you've got those guys like that in your lineup, then I think that that's great mentorship for a player like Byfield.
Well, good luck to him and Beniers and the rest of these kids. They're really enjoying this tournament. I'm not sure about you, but when it comes to the retro reverse jerseys, I'm still not a fan of the Maple Leafs one. So if I was going to get one, of course, the Avs one looks great, and McKinnon or Makar would be great. But this Byfield LA Kings retro reverse jersey is really intriguing me.
Yeah, I got a Byfield. It's not a reverse retro jersey, but it is a vintage jersey. I got that purple and gold for Christmas. Nice. And it just looks so nice. I never want to take it off.
Again, you can reach him on Twitter at Dylan Galloway _. Thank you for coming on the show, Dylan.
Thanks again, Peter.
I hope you had fun with our World Juniors episode for the beginning of Season 6. It was fun talking to everyone and getting back into some hockey talk. Chatting with Uffe and Sami was really fun, and it was great to hear their view of the game. After the pandemic, hopefully we can all go back and watch the World Juniors next year. Remember, we've got another World Juniors episode coming up next Wednesday, and then we'll have a jam-packed 4 episodes to start the NHL season in the following week, in 2 weeks. Divisional episodes with reporters and writers for every single team. 4 episodes. Enjoy in 2 weeks. Remember, if you do enjoy anything you hear in this episode or don't, please tweet me or go to our website, jablamsports.com, and contact us there. And of course, you can get all our notes for all our games episodes on there. If you want on Twitter, I'm at Russian98 or the entire team at Jablam Sports. We're also on Facebook. Our Facebook group at Jablam Sports is on there as well, and our Instagram. So check those out. If you want, you can use our hashtag Jablam Sports. That's JABLAM Sports for any questions or ideas for the show. Please subscribe, rate, and review us on Apple Podcasts, Google Play, or Spotify, or wherever you find podcasts. And please click on the 3 dots in your podcasting app, top right corner, and share this episode with 3 friends you know. Thank you, everyone. Shout out for this episode is for Juan. He's joined the team to help with some social media elements for us. I've gone back to school, of course, if you don't remember, for the pandemic. And it was great meeting with some of the great professors and colleagues while taking social media classes at Seneca while social distancing those classes. So Juan is a great colleague, and he's already hardworking and helping me out with the podcast. Thank you, everyone. And of course, for everyone out there, to all my listeners, I'm giving you a virtual hug. Stay healthy, listen, be yourself, and stay strong.